right, so goals for the day. I would like to get the turbos hung, and then after that I think I'm gonna take a break and like just clean the garage. I have done a lot of cutting and grinding, so I got metal shavings all over. Same with over here, and we're starting to accumulate. So mission for today will be small. So I'm gonna take this threaded rod out because that's what I'm gonna use to hang the turbos by. I gotta make a little template to hang the turbo from, and that's where I would like to get today so I can eyeball where the turbos wanna go. So I don't know about you, but if I'm not happy with the workspace, I'm not really happy with the project. And we're getting towards the end of winter, so there's just been a lot of stuff accumulating over winter. I'm kind of waiting for a nice spring day to just open the garage door and it's nice and sunny out and I can do a good clean sweep of the garage. But we're not there yet, and it's snowing right now and it just gets sick of the weather. You guys want to see something really nuts? So I'm going to start by cutting this rod in half. All right, and they're cut. They're not exactly perfect right down the middle, but that's not going to matter too much because the end I cut off, I'm going to actually weld to a plate that's going to bolt to the turbo, and then I'll just hang it and I'll have as much adjustment as I need. All right, so I was going to be super genius here, and I cut a template for a flange, but I ended up using the wrong flange to make the template because the 67, 66s have like the Garrett style fittings. They're different than, I guess, like your traditional style. So they're a little bit smaller. The bolt pattern is actually off. So the flange that I made using this template did not work. So I ended up just cutting the bolt holes off. I tried to re-drill them and then got frustrated because trying to re-drill next to a hole that already exists is kind of a pain. But then what I realized I could do, basically chop the holes off, and then I could just run it right through the fitting. Now the drain fitting will actually hold the rod right in, and then I can just put the washer on there, tighten the nut down, then it won't pivot or rock back and forth, and then I can just run it through and hang it just like this. So the driver's side's already hanging. That's kind of about where it's going to be. Now I'll get the passenger side hung up. So we'll get this thing hung up. I did put an extra nut on the back side, on the bottom side of this one, I guess, so that I have a jam nut there and I can lock it in place. Now let's get this one started. All right, so I should have full adjustability of this up and down, and then I'll actually be able to tighten it up when I get it where I want it so it won't rock or pivot. All right, well, I think I have everything I need to start on the manifolds. I also did do that cleaning, so I actually have some space now. Got most of the crap off the workbench, cleaned up all underneath here and reorganized the tools, and then kind of laid out everything that I want to use here. I did get a couple more of these Stainless Bros bends. These are 45s. So I got two 90s, two 45s, and then I also got these 2.5-inch aluminum cast elbows. And then my plan here is to cut this little flange off the turbo and then basically come off of the turbo right into this section here. So that should work out pretty cool. So what I'll do now is verify that the turbos are exactly where I want them to be. I'm going to lock these down into position so they can't rotate or spin like this. And then I'll go ahead and start making the pipes. So it should be real straightforward. It's going to be a V-band, the 90, into the reducer, into the 2.5-inch. So let's do that. So I ran and picked up some acetone because I was out of that, and I picked up some new brushes. And I marked them for aluminum, mild, and stainless. That way I can keep them separate. The brushes that I did have were getting kind of a little messy, and I was using them for a lot of different random stuff. So we're going to start fresh on this one. Got acetone. I wiped down all of the elbows, especially these two elbows here, because I was kind of handling them while my hands were greasy from other stuff. So I was just wiping that stuff off, making sure there's no fingerprints or anything on it, because I don't want there to be like greasy fingerprints on it, and then I weld it and it like burns the grease into it and you see fingerprints on it. So the 3-inch male-female V-bands that I got are these Evil Energy V-bands, and they do have the quick release on them. So these quick release V-bands are awesome. I really like these. Downside though is I did go to the hardware store and I got some new nuts. This is the stainless nut that it comes with on the end, and it does have like those little locking tabs on the end. So just for test fitting on and off, I didn't want to use the stainless nut because if this threaded T-bar is stainless, they can gall up while you're tightening and loosening them, and then you can actually break this thing before you actually want to use it. While I was at the hardware store, I took a magnet to all of this stuff to see what was stainless and what was not. The nut is stainless, but this is actually a mild steel. This was magnetic. So I guess I don't have to worry about them galling, which is okay. I ended up getting I ended up getting different nuts for it anyways for test fitting. But the actual V-band itself, they are magnetic, so they're not stainless, but they should still look pretty decent and should be able to maintain them pretty well. So this does have the male flange in it. This does have the male flange on it, so that's the one I'm going to be using to start the mock-up with. I'll set this off to the side for now. So what I'm going to end up doing is something like this, and this actually fits inside through here pretty nice, because I think I'm going to want to manipulate this angle a little bit coming off the manifold. So that should be pretty good. I'm going to have the V-band, the 90, and then the reducer is going to go into the 2.5-inch V-band to the turbo. Alright, this one I'm going to tack in the car, or in the truck, because I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to get it where I want it. It'll be slightly, turbo placement will be slightly different than what I mocked up, but it shouldn't be too bad. Issue is I just have to rotate it, otherwise there's a gap between the flange and the pipe. So I'm gonna have to like rotate with one hand, push, and try to tack it with the other hand. So that's kind of what it looks like, all tacked in place. It's not perfectly aligned on the V-band part, but that part is basically right to the end of the V-band. It's not like flush, or it's not inside of it, but comes out next down and then goes into the turbine. So I still kind of got the effect that I wanted out of it. You can see it's not like perfectly lined up with the bar, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to pull it out, I'm going to get a couple tacks on it, and then I think I'm going to fully clamp the V-bands together and then weld it. Looking baller. Okay, so there's the piece. I'm actually pretty happy with how this thing turned out. The V-band joints look really good. This one looks really good here. I like that one. It was a little kind of crappy at the start there because my tungsten was dirty from finishing this up, and when I started over here it was like really wide and I just couldn't get the tack to go right. Okay, here's what I got for this piece. I think the fit up went pretty well. There, you can see it without as much glare. But there's really no gaps from what I can see. That one I think is just misaligned a little bit. So I got one tack. So I got one tack on the top of each side. So I'm going to be very careful taking this thing apart because it's probably going to be like an accordion. I did end up having to stuff a glove inside here and push it over just a little bit. We're talking like very, very small just to keep the pressure there. And then I put some tape on the bottom side of it just to kind of hold the piece in place because it was really hard for me with, one human being to push the turbo over, clamp it, like hold the pieces tight, hold the piece up in the air, and then tack weld it. So stuff that in there, taped it, held it in place, and now I'm going to pull it all out, probably get a tack on each side, line everything up, and then I'll fully weld it. And that piece, like honestly, might shift or warp a little bit and might throw the measurement off, but I actually uploaded a cell phone video last night of all the measurements. And what I did with everything on this side was I tried to get it matched up exactly like this side, according to where it is placed to the body. If you want to go back and look at that video, you'll see all the measurements, but I have 6 threads on each one. It's about 4 1/8 from the housing to the hood bracket. I made sure that the angle that they're hanging from was level to the ground and then measured these off the ground. I'm not doing intercooler stuff yet, but these are at the same angle. I use the angle finder and they're at like 32 degrees. And then each of the exhaust housing inlets are at like 3.5 degrees. So I tried to get them as symmetrical to the body as I possibly could. But if I weld this thing and it warps a little bit, hopefully it won't be too much, or it'll be like within a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch if it warps and gets messed up. So let's get going. I'll pull this thing out and weld it. All right, so got everything all tacked up. The fitment actually turned out really well. There's no gaps all the way around the whole thing, so that's good. I'm just gonna wash this thing, or just clean it off with some acetone first, and then I'll stuff the ends with some tin foil, and then we'll get welding. All right, so I'm gonna make a little plug, I think, for my purge line. I cut this section here. This is the old up pipe from the manifold on the old twin turbo setup. So this is the 2.5 inch V-band. I'll kind of do this one the same way that I did this. So that's capped. And all I did was fold this. Probably make a little hole in it. And this will serve multiple purposes. I'll be able to clamp the V-band down so the V-band doesn't warp or will resist warping. I have a nice place to hold the hose in there, then the hose isn't going to be loose and flopping around. And then it's kind of in the middle of the pipe. It's not touching anything that's going to get hot. And that should work pretty decent. And I'll put a little more on, but it does have a little bit of breathing room over here, so I shouldn't really have to like poke holes in the end to get it to breathe. All right, now I got my pipe. Alright, so that piece is all done now. I'm just going to let it cool off. So there's the one V-band. Pipe to pipe connection turned out okay. There's the 3-inch V-band. And this other pipe to pipe section over here, that one actually turned out pretty good too. Felt like I improved a lot on my consistency on this one all the way around, so that was pretty good. I'm very happy with how this piece turned out. So I'm going to let it cool off, clean it up, get all these little fingerprint junk marks off of it from my gloves, and then we'll put it in. Okay, so that's what they look like all mocked up. I did get the support hanger off there, so they're completely just hanging on the manifolds, and I think it turned out pretty good. I didn't get a video of the inside of the pipe with the back purge, so I'll insert a picture here, but it actually turned out really nice. The inside looks really good. But because my battery's dead and I'm going to do some work today, I'm probably going to end the video here. I did get this Klein angle finder here today, so this thing is pretty sweet. I'll be using this for all the rest of the piping and like the down pipes and everything, so that'll be nice. I was using the Tremec angle finder app on my phone, and there's some inconsistencies there with the app and using the phone, and my hands vibrate a lot, and this thing is magnetic, and it's like a super powerful magnet, so that works really sweet. I mean, it's not going to work on stainless or aluminum, but anything steel that I do, so that'll be cool. So I'm going to end this one here, and then we'll do a separate video on starting to get the intercooler and stuff done. I'm planning to do something a little bit interesting with one of these guys off the turbo, so stick around for that.